Hey guys, welcome to Midwest Fantasy Football Week 16 recap, the semifinals. Looking at the first matchup this weekend, Jason's best of times, blurst of times gets past Scott B's Serenity Now, 124.5 to 118.9. For Jason, his team was led by 30.96 points from Josh Allen, followed by a pair of 19-point games from Jamar Chase and the Philadelphia defense. He also got 18 from Amari Cooper. A couple of weak spots. Melvin Gordon did not contribute a whole lot, just put up a half of a point, and George Kittle only put up 3.1 compared to his normal, decent-sized numbers. The 30-point man over on the other side for Scotty B was Justin Jackson, 30.2 points in his flex spot, followed by 25.5 from Mark Andrews. Then you had a couple of 10-point to 13-point games from Matt Ryan, Aaron Jones, and Seattle's defense. If you really want to look at weak spots for you, probably be your wide receivers this week. You only got 8.3 from Christian Kirk and 3.9 from Russell Gage. Looking at your guys' benches, well, it looks like J Money won that one. He had 10 points from Darren Williams that he didn't end up using. He could have swapped that in favor of Melvin Gordon. The 8 points that you got from Buffalo's defense was definitely not an improvement over Philadelphia, so you look like you chose correctly there. Looking at Scott's bench, he had about 8 points from DJ Moore, 6.9 from Hollywood Brown. The rest of the team was either out with injuries or COVID this weekend. Subbing those guys in for your couple of your weaker wide receivers, looks like you probably still would have come up just short in this one. Over in matchup number 2, Pope 2.0's Pew Pews. Eric holds off Chris's 2 men in a defense, 129.3 to 82.2. For Pope 2.0, your team was led by 28.5 points from Joe Mixon, 22.5 from Rashad Penny, and then a trio of 16-point games from Justin Herbert, Cooper Kupp, and Ryan Suckup. For Eric, you did have 12.8 points from Antonio Gibson on your bench. It would have been a minor improvement over something that you had in your starting lineup, but it didn't matter. For Chris, looks like you were led by 16.5 from Russell Wilson and 15.6 from Justin Jefferson, and a pair of 13-point games from Jeff Wilson Jr. and Kyle Pitts. For you, wide receiver was definitely a weak spot. Tyreek Hill started after being out with injuries or COVID, I think it was actually, and he had a pretty quiet game, only 2 catches for 2.9 points. And A.J. Green in your flex spot also only had 1 catch for 33 yards, so 3.8 points. Your bench is not something you're going to want to talk about probably during a semifinal. You had 77 points scored on your bench amongst just 4 players. So Miami's defense of 29.6 points would have definitely been an improvement over New Orleans' defense. You asked me last week who should you start for defenses and whether it be New Orleans or Miami, and I said New Orleans, and I clearly was wrong. So hence the reason that I'm in, not in the deuce, fortunately, but definitely not in the championship bracket either. And then besides that, if you're talking about wide receivers, your couple of poor games from wide receiver Tyreek Hill and from A.J. Green. The Allen Lazard with 12.8 points. I think it's Byron Berrios. Is it Byron Berrios? Something B. Braxton Berrios. Braxton Berrios for the Jets put up 18.5. And then, speaking of the Jets, Michael Carter actually put up 16.4 at running back as well. So you could have used probably all 3 of those in favor of people on your lineup. So if you just swapped out Tyreek Hill, Alvin Kamara, and A.J. Green in favor of Michael Carter, Allen Lazard, and Braxton Berrios. Oh, and the New Orleans defense for Miami. Yeah, you definitely would have won. Yeah. Math. Bummer. Jason, with the win, moves on to face next week in the championship. Number 1 versus number 2, Pope 2.0 versus Jason. This will be the 3rd time that 1v2 have met in the championship, according to our stat guy. and it looks like the number 2 seed has a tendency to come out ahead. I was going to go back and look to figure out for either of you guys' championships if you guys were 1s or 2 seeds. Hold, please, while I go and look that up.
No, don't put me on hold.
Looking back at league histories, no, neither of you guys were either the 1 or the 2 seed when you won your championships. Eric was the 3 seed, and I actually have already forgotten where Jason... No, Eric was the 6 seed. Jason was the 3 seed. Sorry, I got sidetracked. When I was looking at Jason's, I saw my own name as a playoff team, and that was so far ago that I just completely blew my mind and lost track of everything. So this weekend, Jason will be looking for his 2nd championship, and Eric will be looking for championship number 3 with the idea to move to the only league member who has 3 championships. So Jason, I'm officially rooting for you now. In the 5th place game, I don't know if you guys actually bet anything on it or even talked or looked at your teams. Trent knocked off Alex's Quad D, 146.6 to 99.1. In the 7th place game, I think is what it would be, or whatever you want to call it, Lee versus Nick. That ended up being a kicker battle. Lee was unable to add the kicker that he wanted because his team was locked out, but Lee ended up winning that one with Michael Badgley knocking off whoever Nick's kicker was. Nick's kicker was Daniel Carlson. So Michael Badgley over Daniel Carlson, like 9 points to 6 points, something like that. And I believe that there was a 6-pack wager on that one as well, so congrats to Lee on that one. Down in the deuce bracket, again, we had to do some wonky tracking here because it didn't do the best versus worst in this one. Because of that, so the stats actually showed, myself playing Tom, but it was actually me playing Josh this weekend. My There's No Way I Win This knocked off Josh's Oh God This Again, 109.1 to 93.9. My team was led by 29 points from A.J. Brown, fresh off of IR. And then I had 15.1 points from Antonio Brown and a pair of 14-point games from Tom Brady and Alexander Madison. For Josh, he got 23 points from Sony Michel, 16.6 from Jalen Hurts, and 11.7 from Odell Beckham Jr. Running back was a bit of a weak spot for you. You got 3.3 from Saquon Barkley and 5.4 from Amir Abdullah. You didn't really have much on your bench either. You only had 3.4 points available there, which would have been a slight improvement over the 3.3, but wouldn't have really mattered. You did also get 10.2 points from your kicker, which that was a double-digit game, so I should probably call that one out as well. Looking at the other matchup, that's Tom versus Brandon. So Brandon's blown call sneaks past Tom's I Can See for Miles and Miles, 93.3 to 71.9. That's funny the way the matchups actually worked out. Those two were playing against each other. You guys were both losers in your matchups that were playing, but fortunately still one of you gets to move on, which is Tom, and one of you is safe, which is Brandon. For Brandon's blown call, you got 28.9 from Nick Chubb and 22.3 from Patrick Mahomes. You survived getting a negative score from the Los Angeles Chargers defense with a negative 0.9 points. Your bench, in 4 or 5 point games, really nothing huge there to be noteworthy. You did also survive getting a 0 from Mike Evans, and just 2.8 points from Rob Gronkowski.
Tampa Bay's trash, man.
For Tom, you got 18 points from Stephon Diggs, 17.4 from Carson Wentz, who's now got COVID, so have fun with that this weekend. And then 16.5 from Devontae Smith, who was on your bench, unfortunately. That's 16.5 points in favor of somebody like, I don't know, Miles Sanders was only going to be about another 10-point bump. 10 points, I don't think would have been enough. 10 points would not have given you enough to get you the win. So moving on to the deuce matchup this weekend, it will be best team versus the worst team there as well, which is going to be Tom versus Josh. We don't have the tracking for historical purposes on best versus worst. I know it's happened a couple times in the past. I don't know who's traditionally won that one. Other noteworthy things, a couple teams are going to get locked this week, and that's just myself and Brandon. Chris and Scotty B, you guys are still going to be unlocked because you're playing for third place. There's third place money involved. So the only newly locked teams this week are myself and Brandon. I will be setting the matchups accordingly, so that way Tom and Josh will be matched against each other for this upcoming weekend. In terms of wagers, there's a couple of wagers that have really settled up this week. Going back to the very beginning of the season, I had a wager with Drew Ritchie against the Jets over and under. The Jets won this weekend, which pushed them to 4 wins, so that means I win a 6-pack from Drew, so I'm pretty happy about that one. Less notable ones, I can pretty much call this one done, even though it's not yet. We'll see if it happens in the playoffs. I think Randall Cobb is probably out for the season. He had some surgery last week. So with that, my 5.5 catches or more in a single game is going to be a fail, which means I owe Nick a 6-pack. And then a wager that was made a couple weeks ago, which was Derek versus Lee on their head-to-head, which was week 14. I just didn't recap that one. Lee won that one. And then this weekend, I did mention that Nick and Lee had a fight on kickers to figure out who was going to be the winning team there. And I think Lee wins that one as well. So Lee did well in the last couple of wagers that he made. That's it for me. Next week we'll have recap for the championship matchup. We'll have a recap for the Deuce. We'll probably start talking about the end of season survey, that kind of thing. Hope you guys all had a good Christmas. And have a good New Year. And I will talk to you next week.